Hey, let's talk about reading today. So, when I was little, my mom and my dad used to read me books before I went to sleep. Depending on how long the books were, if they were really quite long or quite short, I would get up to a maximum of three short books and three short songs, or maybe one big book and one tiny book, or whatever it might be. It was wonderful for compromise for my parents, I imagine. But yeah, throughout that time, I loved books, but I never really read them myself. It was my parents reading them to me. I used to fall asleep listening to their voices, reading all these different stories and adventures. But as I got older, I had to start reading on my own, and it wasn't really something that I liked to do. I always found it so difficult. And now looking back, I think my ADHD did not help, but this necessity to read was such an obligation in school. We were given stories that weren't exactly stories that I liked because they were about little boys or about, the difficulties of the world. And so I wasn't really into it. And I didn't read for a long time. And the only way that I could actually read, if I had to do it for school, was actually not by reading, it was by listening to audiobooks. And somehow it kind of, I guess, tapped into that childhood thing of I could listen to kind of any story if someone else was reading it to me. So I would spend hours before a school project reading a book and listening to the audiobook. It made it bearable in a way to listen to these stories. And then I got into college and I just didn't read anymore. I didn't need to for my classes. It was a little different in my format. And I didn't really have that connection for a long time. But then, about 3 years ago, I was in Brazil, living in Brazil, and I wanted to read. I wanted to, try something different, kind of rediscover that. And I couldn't exactly find books in English. And I wasn't quite good enough in Portuguese to read it. And so I started doing audiobooks again. I started finding books that I was kind of interested in, but that I couldn't find the physical book for, and I couldn't quite bring myself to just sit in silence and read. So I went back to audiobooks, and I was able to fall in love with that style of reading. And I am just now reading books because I started picking stories that made me excited and interested me and were such a fun way to find reading again. But I still adore audiobooks. There is something about listening to a voice and looking at the words and making that connection. My comprehension was so much higher. And that is actually true when we look at language learning as well. When you read and when you listen at the same time, when we're learning new material, the connection of these two things helps you remember the vocabulary. It helps you connect with it a little bit better. And so I have found that whether you just want to learn how to read again as an adult, which I've been very excited to do, or you want to practice a little bit of a new language, this capacity to listen and to read, and then to maybe start to just read, or maybe to just listen, whatever that might be, it always just goes back to that childhood memory of mine of listening to a story. And so I guess I kind of have two things other than that story. One is I have a link in my bio that has books that I have loved reading and at the time that I discovered it. So if you want to check that out, you can. But also, if you want to listen to me speak in Portuguese about English learning, and specifically through podcasts, I do have that available, and it's going to happen on Wednesday, the 30th of October. If you want to come to my just Instagram live, I'll be chatting with Carolina, and we're going to be talking about podcasts, and also the necessity to kind of have text available when you read, like when you listen. This helps with your listening practice, it helps with your vocabulary, your attention. And I like to think about it, especially with podcasts that are storytelling. They kind of serve as books in a way. They are kind of audiobooks, but it's of people's lives and it's of conversations. And I find that so inspiring. And it was such a fun way for me to be able to collaborate and to kind of come back into that, you know, listening and reading, reading and listening, and finding some joy in it again. So, yeah, I hope you like the story. If you want to check out the live, you can. If you want to check out my little bookshop, you can. But otherwise, I hope you're having a wonderful day. And go ahead and put in the comments if you have made it all the way here. Go ahead and put like a book emoji and let me know what book you're reading or what book you would like to read. I'll see you soon.